Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to our game day show for Minnesota, the battle for the Little Brown Jug. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. In just a minute, we'll hear a few PJ Fleck thoughts on the game. Then we'll be joined by Clayton Sayfie from the Wolverine magazine and the Wolverine on 3. Earlier this week on the Visitors Edition, I had Minnesota radio play-by-play voice Mike Grimm on. He reminded me how long it's been since the Gophers went home with custody of the Little Brown Jug. I'm sure a lot of you think these trophy games had their day, and it's a nice memory of the past in a college football world that has changed dramatically over the last decade and really continues to change. These old trophy games still mean something to any Gopher or Wolverine that ever played in this game, and to the present players. It's the oldest trophy game in all of college football. No one can verify this, but it's also thought to be the oldest trophy game in all of sports. That alone means something. So let's enjoy the renewal of this famous battle, knowing that whoever wins will parade that jug around the field on Saturday and be overjoyed they have it for the next year. At his presser this week, PJ Fleck explained how they get ready to play in what will be a hostile environment.
Shoot, I mean, I think we played in some hostile environments before. I tell you what, our fans at Huntington Bank Stadium and our student body was unbelievable the other night. It was rocking. That was as loud as I've heard it in a long time. And that was tremendous. So the environment they create, we create a lot of that. You can't hear in practice anyway. You guys have been there before. I mean, our guys can't hear. And, the big house is not called the little house. It's called the big house for a reason. But we can't let the circumstance dictate our behavior. And, you got to be able to play anywhere in the Big Ten. And you've been preparing for that all offseason.
PJ said he has a pretty good idea what to expect from the Michigan offense on Saturday.
In terms of their offense, I mean, they're going to run the football. They did that with Jim Harbaugh. They're doing that with Sharon. And they're doing it in a lot of unique ways, especially with the quarterback change. They're big, they're strong. I mean, we've got to be able to stop the run. And we know that. Now they're going to have things off of that with the play action pass and when you are doing that. And but again, if it was a big schematic issue, I would sit here and be like, okay, I'm really worried. There are people nowhere to be found. We have people everywhere where they need to be. We just got to be able to go make the play.
My guest today says that even though we're double-digit favorites this week, that doesn't mean Minnesota can be taken lightly. Every week is going to be an adventure with this team, and this Saturday will probably be no exception. With us next is Clayton Sayfie from the Wolverine magazine and the Wolverine on 3. So stay with us. With us today is Clayton Sayfie from the Wolverine magazine and the Wolverine on 3. Great to have you back, Clayton.
Great to be here. This is exciting.
It is exciting. And before we look ahead to Minnesota and the Little Brown Jug, let's back up and spend a few minutes on the SC game on Saturday, beginning with the first start from Alex Orji. I mean, none of us knew what to expect. I suppose the best I can say is he did what he was asked to do. What did you think of his performance?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. The main thing coming out of Davis Warren's first three starts was, okay, the quarterback at Michigan, especially if you're going to play this style of football, can't turn the ball over. And, of course, you know, the most important quarterback stat, as Alex Orji said on Monday, is you get the win. And he did those two things. I mean, he did have some key runs, especially early on in the game. You know, the defense has to account for him in the run game, so you can attribute some of Kalel Mullings, Donovan Edwards' success to him. At the same time, you know, the offense got pretty stagnant or very stagnant or as stagnant as it could get there, you know, in the third quarter till the middle of the fourth quarter till really they got their first down of the second half, which was Kalel Mullings' 63-yard run, which I'm sure we'll talk about. So, you know, they've got to be able to find a way to move the ball consistently. You know, I think they were very fortunate. They broke 3 long runs, and they got a pick 6. So, but the thing is, you got the win. Alex Orji, you know, was able to operate back there. You need more out of the passing game, but there's no reason to believe that can't develop as time goes on. They have a little bit of time here now with Minnesota coming in. It's not a pushover by any means, but it's not like you're playing USC again or a caliber of opponent like that. You're still at home before you go on the road against Washington. So he passed the test. The team passed the test, more importantly, and they need to do more, though, going forward. But you're not going to apologize for winning a game like that. That was a special win.
Yes, it was. Well, in the first half, he didn't really need to throw because Michigan was in smash mouth mode. And from the first snap, that O-line was really the best we've seen them this year, wasn't it?
It was. And it's amazing, you know, what a couple of weeks can do. And Sharon Moore said a couple of weeks ago that, hey, it doesn't happen right away with offensive lines. Even last year, look at all the experience they had and the guys coming back. I mean, we were wondering after the East Carolina game and UNLV and Bowling Green, you know, when is the O-line really going to open those big holes? I mean, where are these big runs going to be coming from? And then, of course, late in the year, you know, you had confidence that was going to happen in the big games, in the big moments. And think of all the big runs Michigan had late last season. So it does take time. They made a focus of it after the Texas game to work on the run game. And then, you know, a couple weeks later, Alex Orji ends up being your quarterback. So you need the run game to be even more featured. And they got it done, you know, against the USC defense that has some talent over there. They're well coordinated. They've improved a lot. But in your first Big Ten game, can you tackle Kalel Mullings and Alex Orji and Donovan Edwards and hit the right gaps every single play? Because if you don't, we all saw what happened. And, you know, USC was good. Lincoln Riley said this week when he got back to Southern Cal there. He said, we played like bosses against 43 out of 47 runs, but the other 4 hurt us. And I would argue there were some more good runs there for Michigan, but I understand his point, you know, and but you have to credit Michigan's offensive line and the running backs for establishing that type of mentality and physical play.
Yeah, the run blocking, as we said, was very good early. But even with limited passing attempts, the pass pro was leaky, especially over on the right side. Alex did not have a lot of time to scan the field in his limited dropbacks. But again, the key to me and the most important thing coming from that was he did not make bad decisions, did he?
No, you're right. You know, a couple of the passes early on that they did throw, it was really tightly covered. And, you know, the ball ended up on the ground, which is all you can ask for at the very least, right? I mean, you'd prefer a completion, but anything but throwing it to the other team. You know, there was some risk on some of those, but really, you know, not all that much. And then, you know, think of the flea flicker, right? Mm-hmm. He's ready to uncork that thing down the field, but nobody was open. So he tucks it and runs and gets 5, 6, 7 yards, something like that.
Right.
That was a great decision. You know, the time that everyone has the screenshot of, right, that Samaj Morgan was wide open in the fourth quarter on that passing play, he didn't have time, to your point on the pass protection. So he decides, and, you know, I think he kind of moved the wrong way in the pocket, but he takes a sack, and, you know, you can live to play another down there. At some point, the quarterback is going to have to make plays in the passing game, but making good decisions like those, cannot necessarily hurt you, especially when you're running the ball like you did. And, they weren't running it all that well, I guess, in the second half, but then you get the big runs late. So, yeah, decision making is going to be huge. That was his first game as a starter, as much as we talked about, or at least I did, after Davis Warren's first start, right? He'll get better. Same thing goes for Alex Orji. It's his first time playing in a game, in a big game, as the starter, and he made some good decisions back there.
Well, you mentioned Kalel Mullings a minute or so ago. He was just a beast once again. I mean, the kid just keeps those legs churning. He has to be the guy getting the most carries moving forward, doesn't he?
I mean, there's no question. And if Donovan Edwards is the hot hand, or starts being the guy that is doing what Kalel Mullings is doing right now, which is averaging 9.4 yards per carry last game, then sure, it should be him. But definitely I would start out with Kalel Mullings. And I mean, it's hard to put into words what that performance was, not only early in the game with the big touchdown run and all the other runs in between, but then late in the game to have that run that, kind of reminds you of Hassan Haskins and a little bit of Davion Smith in there. He had that one run against BYU where he spun out of a tackle and was gone. And, the linebacker in him. I mean, that run is what Sharon Moore called a Michigan legend run. And, like we said, they had nothing going offensively in the second half until he just willed it there. I mean, they had guys there to tackle him, but he just broke free and, just kept those legs turning. As you said, you watch it in slow motion. I mean, the legs just never stop moving. It's kind of similar to us Lions fans watching David Montgomery on Sundays. The same type of thing, the relentlessness. And then at the end, Michigan's down to the 1 yard line, and you have one play on fourth down, I formation, fullback, extra offensive lineman in there, two young tight ends that were thrust in there because Marlon Klein and Colston Loveland went down, and they got the job done up front, just enough for Kalel Mullings to dart in there into the end zone. That was Michigan football in a nutshell right there on that fourth down.
It was, and I want to give credit to Max Bredesen, who we don't mention enough because that was a great seal block on that run.
It was. I've watched it. I don't know how many times you've watched it, but I've watched it like 100 times. that overhead shot that CBS had, and and then you go back and watch the game. Max Bredesen was doing that all game. Of course, that was the biggest moment, but every single key play, it was 44. Coming after somebody, and he's just. You talk about relentlessness with Kalel Mullings. He's a relentless blocker. He loves it. He thrives on it. And he's fun to watch. I mean, like you said, like Michigan fans probably appreciate fullbacks more than anybody, but even within that, he doesn't get enough praise because this run game wouldn't be what it is without him.
No, I absolutely agree with that. Well, his Monday presser, Sharon pretty much said Kalel as the number one guy, then Donovan. The thing we have yet to see is Kirk Campbell drawing up, some more sweeps, jet sweeps, or utilizing him in the passing game. That would add another dimension to this offense because Donovan is a weapon and he's just got to be utilized better or differently, doesn't he?
I mean, we've all seen it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the proof is in the pudding that he can do those things. Even lined up at wide receiver. I remember last year against Purdue, he had that long catch down the sideline, got down to the goal line on just a go route from J.J. McCarthy. And he was lined up as a receiver, and he looked really smooth out there. We've seen him do it from the slot. We've seen him get out from the backfield and catch some passes. We saw it early in this game with that screen pass that picked up 9 yards. And, he just looks different running with the football when he's in the open field. And a lot of the ways you can get him the ball is throwing it to him. So I would like to see that more, especially when you think about what this offense is going to be as long as Alex Orji is still your starter. A lot of throws to tight ends, a lot of the shorter passes to guys like Samaj Morgan, like I mentioned, the screen to Donovan Edwards. You had a little short crossing route to Frederick Moore, but it's a lot of shorter stuff near the line of scrimmage. And Donovan Edwards is great at those plays. So I would like to see it more. And could you get him on the field at the same time as Kalel Mullings? I would like to explore those options if I'm Kirk Campbell as well.
Yeah.
Because you have an offense that looks a little bit limited here. They look like a pitcher that has one or two pitches right now. And it worked in one game, but how can you make sure you have a changeup and a curveball and everything else? And Donovan Edwards should be a big part of that puzzle.
Well, I think we're all asking the same question, though, after Saturday. Is this kind of game plan sustainable? And my thoughts are, yes, it can be with this proviso. Those limited throws have to be more productive eventually. I mean, it's not a sustainable offense if we're running the ball, but completing 7-yard passes or passes in the flats that are going nowhere. So that has to be the key moving forward, doesn't it, Clayton?
Yeah, there's got to be more to it. And, again, it was his first start.
Yeah.
I did see, Gary Danielson was talking about it on the broadcast as well. He's got pretty good throwing motion, but we all know that there's a lot more that goes into it than that. I mean, Davis Warren throws a really pretty ball, but he just couldn't stop making bad decisions with the football. And I think he'll get better as time goes on, too. I mean, he hasn't played a lot of football in his life, but same goes for Alex Orji. He's got to be able to do a little bit more. I think you can win this game. It helped that this was Alex Orji's first start, and USC didn't know exactly what to expect from a Michigan offense led by him. They had the 2 weeks to prepare coming off their bye week. One of the weeks they thought Davis Warren was the starter. The next week they had to prepare for Alex Orji, and they didn't know what his arm was exactly like. I think after halftime they adjusted a little bit, like we talked about. Michigan had some less success with USC knowing that Michigan's likely going to keep it on the ground. So there's got to be more to it, but we can't not mention the fact that Colston Loveland was out in this game too. And what was one of the big complaints about the Michigan offense the first 3 weeks before Alex Orji was the starter, it was that it was too tight end dependent, and that Colston Loveland was really the only guy getting going. After 3 weeks, he led the country's tight ends with 24 targets. He led the country's tight ends with 19 receptions. So, Michigan, it's not just that he's good. It was that they had to rely on Colston Loveland. Alex Orji didn't have that safety blanket. So getting him back, making sure that Marlon Klein gets healthy too. He went down with what looked to be a hamstring on the long Kalel Mullings run, as you know, would be a key as well, because I think Marlon Klein's got a really bright future. But I want to judge this thing once he has his full group of weapons out there. But there's no question he's got to get better, and there's no reason to believe he can't. The question is, how good can he get? How quick? Because you are going to have to be a little more two-dimensional or multi-dimensional in some of these bigger games going forward.
Well, on Tuesday when I taped with Mike Grimm, the Gophers radio guy, he said PJ Fleck is not sold on just seeing Alex Orji on Saturday. And he thinks what might happen is Michigan has a package for both Orji and Davis Warren. Now, I've never been a fan of the two-quarterback system, but who knows? That might be something we see maybe even by necessity, Clayton.
Yeah, so this past game was interesting because it played out how Michigan needed it to play out, right? You get an early lead. You control the field position battle, which I thought was huge. And really, they started to do that even before they got the lead. They got some big runs. They got a defensive score. They were able to kind of cling to the lead. And then at the end, when they were down, they got the big run to score at the end. And you can't take anything away from Michigan for doing that. But if the script doesn't play out like that and you're down 10-0 or 14-0, then what do you do? If the pass game can't get going with Alex Orji and the issue is turnovers with Davis Warren, well, you're going to have to dial up the risk a little bit anyway, because you're going to have to get something going if you're down points. So that is an interesting thing. I think if things are going according to plan and Michigan's up 10-0 at the end of the first quarter against Minnesota, they're not going to think about bringing in Davis Warren at any point as long as things continue to go that way. But if they don't, I think number 16's got to be ready because really, again, I was thinking up in the press box about, hey, do they go to Davis Warren here at the end of the game when they needed to throw?
Yeah.
They didn't. And then, I rewatched the game and Gary Danielson said the same thing so it was kind of a thought in a lot of people's minds there at the end. So I do wonder if things don't go according to plan, what they do. But for right now, it seems like it's going to be Alex Orji until it's not. You just hope that, if it's not and they have to make a change, it's not too late, right? So there's a fine line there that Sharon Moore and Kirk Campbell have to balance.
Yeah, and I know a lot of our fans have been questioning the play calling so far, and I think, to be fair, Kirk Campbell is a pretty smart guy. He knows what he's working with, and the truth is, he's still trying to figure out what works best for this offense, isn't he?
And you had to change a lot of what you're doing after week 3. And really go back to Fresno State week. They didn't know who the starter was going to be until I think the staff decided on Wednesday after practice. So I think in hindsight, maybe they would have benefited from picking a guy earlier and kind of building the offense around that person. And not just the play calls, but hey, what are your best plays that you can go to when the game's on the line, or you need something in this situation or that situation, or the red zone or third down or that sort of thing. So, but if it was really that close, I guess I don't blame them for, going the direction that they did. So it does take some time. I think the tough pill to swallow for Michigan fans is that you had such a tough schedule early. Like if last year's team would have had this schedule, they would have handled it pretty well, I think. But this year's team has so many new pieces, and they were challenged so early in the year. There's nothing you can do about it, so you just got to embrace it. And luckily, they've gotten out of the first 3 games with just 1 loss, and you still have your goals in front of you.
Well, another huge positive was the play of the defense, and I never thought we'd push that SCO line around like that, especially in the first half. We've been waiting to see that, though, haven't we?
I mean, that was when you and I talked in the summer, right?
Yeah.
And we talked about the strength of this team. It was the defensive line, and I think that was kind of the vision we all had for what it could look like. Josiah Stewart getting after the quarterback, the pocket collapsing very quickly and from the interior because of guys like Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham. And Rayshon Benny, I think, has been one of the more unsung heroes on this team this year. Derek Moore, maybe doesn't get the amount of pressures or sacks as Josiah Stewart, but you go back and watch, how fundamentally sound he is. He never leaves his rush lane. If they try running his way, he can get off a block really quick. He's another underrated player. And I think the way they took over that game and made it tough on Miller Moss and really made USC one-dimensional. They had the 65-yard run to Woody Marks. Jayshon Barham misses a tackle there in the middle of the field. But other than that, they had, 30-some rushing yards? They were playing with one hand tied behind their back. They had to throw 51 times. They averaged just over 5 yards per attempt. It was just like you draw it up if you're Wink Martindale. And even then, they played a great game, but they still had some things they could clean up in the secondary with some blown coverages. So there's a ways to go in terms of improvement, but up front, that's as good as it gets in college football. And I think those guys, 55, 78, 0, 8, those guys reminded everybody why Michigan was supposed to have one of the best D-lines in the country this year.
Oh, man, it was just it was so much fun to watch. And you hate to nitpick the defense after that performance against the number 11 team in the country because they were so good. But some of the secondary issues, which look to be more communication and just being out of position, that's still something that needs to get fixed, isn't it?
There's no question. And I think that it's going to come, again, with some more experience. There are some new pieces back there, and they play a lot of zone defense. That takes a lot of, just feel of, okay, when do I stop guarding this guy and start guarding the other guy coming over here, passing off receivers to the next defensive back. I think that was an issue on one of the touchdowns. The other touchdown, they run a nickel blitz, and there was nobody there to replace him. I assume a safety is supposed to come over there and play in coverage. And then the last touchdown, the go-ahead score for USC, was Makari Page was in the right spot. He just didn't react quickly enough to the football. Could have picked that thing off or had a pass breakup. So I think they're missing Rod Moore a little bit. I think the other 2 corner spots, the nickel and the Jair Hill spot, those are younger players, less experienced players that have some talent, but need to start playing a little bit better. I thought Jair Hill played probably his best game, though. So they've got to clean that up. They've got to improve there. I think they definitely can. They have the talent to do it. They have the coaching staff to do it. But it's kind of a trend, right, on some of those downs that you got to have it, third and long sort of thing, and you do get a little more creative. The back end's got to make sure they're all on the same page.
Oh, yes, they do. Well, let's look ahead to Saturday and the battle for the Little Brown Jug. Or Minnesota, I should say, comes in 2-2. They played a very good first half against Iowa on Saturday. I was impressed, and they went into the locker room with a 14-7 lead at the half. Then they gave up 200 yards rushing in the second half, and they were outscored 24-0. So what's your initial take on this Minnesota team, Clayton?
Yeah, I'm planning on going back and watching Minnesota-Iowa, and because that is so interesting, because I did look at all the things you just said in terms of the box score and watching PJ Fleck talk earlier this week, where it was just a tale of 2 halves. It was pretty much a complete collapse in the second half. They had 13 missed tackles. They, PJ Fleck said, hey, we were in position to make the tackle. A lot of times we just didn't finish them. And Iowa's got a great back, and I think they've gotten better on the offensive line as well. And, they took advantage. So I think Michigan should be licking their chops in that regard that they're going to be able to run the ball. But at the same time, Minnesota's back to work, and they're going to try to, get back to, not missing all these tackles and being able to stop the run, because that's been a big part of what the Gophers try to do under PJ Fleck. They kind of play similar to Michigan, where they want to run the ball a lot. They want to possess the football, and they want to play good defense. And they have a bunch of starters back on that defense. So just because the game went one way one week doesn't mean the next game's going to go the same way. Michigan fans certainly know that, right? They've improved throughout the year. They've played differently week to week, and gotten better the last two. So you got to be ready for Minnesota to do that. They've got a great running back as well. And I'm interested to see and watch more of their transfer quarterback, Max Brosmer, who came up from the FCS. I think won the FCS Heisman Trophy last season. So it's an adjustment. It's going to be tough playing in this environment for him, but he's got a few games under his belt now up at Minnesota. And, they really could have won that game against North Carolina. They, were in it there until halftime against Iowa. So who knows? This is a team that can compete for sure.
Yeah, and one of the things that surprised me watching Minnesota on Saturday night is I was expecting to see them do what Minnesota does, and that's line up and run the ball against Iowa. It is what they do best. Instead, they throw the ball 37 times. And that's not what you expect to see when you play a PJ Fleck team, is it?
No, they want to run the football, and they do have, I believe it's 4 out of 5 starters coming back from last season on the offensive line. And they have Darius Taylor, a kid that, right here out of the Detroit area as a good running back, who I think last year, led freshmen in rushing, despite not playing in several games due to injury, including the Michigan game that he missed. So he's going to want to come back in here and make a statement as well, because I don't think Michigan really went after him, and he's turned out to be a gem. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the staple of a PJ Fleck offense. I do wonder how much of them throwing that much had to do with being down after they kind of collapsed a little bit. But, it's going to be interesting, because if that's their strength, well, Michigan's strength on defense is stopping the run too. So, I think we could see a low-scoring game here, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota's run defense, even accounting for the gashing it took on Saturday, and most of that came on the edges, which surprised me. It wasn't up the middle. So they've been pretty stout this year, and my guess is we're going to find out how stout they are on Saturday. And even though I'd like to see us establish something through the air on Saturday, I still think the game plan we'll see is buckle up, Gophers. Here we come. I mean, I don't think we're going to see anything diverse, especially early in this game, and if it's wet.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of these smash mouth, Big Ten type of games. And, it's kind of what Michigan prefers to do. As we said, it's kind of what Minnesota prefers to do. I think, when you look at the Minnesota offense, like you said, 37 passes, I would expect that to be similar if Michigan can stop the run, but not as similar if Minnesota has some success. And then if you're Michigan, you're going to run the ball a lot. It could be a field position type of game. Like you said, if the weather is a factor, maybe we don't see as much of what the progression could look like under Alex Orji, if you're talking about Michigan's offense. So it's going to be really interesting, because you didn't come into the year thinking this was going to be a game that would, be a single-digit spread according to Vegas. I penciled it in as my trap game for Michigan, just because it was in between USC and going on the road trip to Washington. But now it feels like with Michigan, like they got a huge win, but every game here is going to be kind of an adventure. Especially as they grow here with new quarterbacks, new players all around him. So there's no giving. And Michigan's going to have to come out ready to play every single week. And we know Minnesota is going to play with max effort, which is a credit to their staff too. So they're not going to come in here, scared or anything like that. They fight, and that's something you can't say about every single team. Some of them will roll over, but Minnesota's not one of them.
No, and one of the things that surprised me was the spread when it came out earlier this week. I usually don't pay attention to that, but I mean, I just don't get it. But based on what we've seen so far this year, and I know I'm a worrywart, but I can imagine, though, is if Michigan turns it over, and it could be a weather game, maybe not heavy rains, but showers during the game, or just struggles for consistency, it's easy for me to envision this game being a dogfight, Clayton.
Yeah, and when both teams play with that style, right, there's little margin for error. So, if it's going to be a game where you score on 3 or 4 possessions, or at least you hope to, then you can't turn it over. If you get a turnover on the other side of things, it's going to be a huge impact play and could change the game. If you fail to move the ball and win the field position battle, then that could really give the other team a leg up. So the margins are thin in games like these, especially when you haven't proven that you have a dynamic offense yet that can, step up in 3rd and long and stay on the field and things like that. If you're going to be punting a decent amount, right? I think Michigan had more punts last game than completed passes. So, it could certainly be a dogfight, and you're going to have to win all those little areas of the game, the areas on the margin.
Well, final question before we let you get away, Clayton. If Michigan wins on Saturday, they're going to be 4-1. If Washington wins, they'll have the same mark. All 5 games have been played in the Big House, though. So that trip to Washington next week is going to be an adventure and another huge test, isn't it?
Michigan's actually going on the road to play a game. I thought they got all 12 this year.
I wish.
It's too bad that 5 of them are in September, and then they only have 3 home games after that. It's kind of depressing that after this week, there'll only be 3 more times in the Big House. But obviously, it's a weird year with the 2 byes, so it kind of eats up some of the time there with 2 off weeks. But man, here's the thing that my coworker Anthony Broom has said quite a bit is the last few years we hadn't really learned what Michigan was until that first road game, right? Where you really find out, okay, what is this team made of? It was in 2021, they go at Wisconsin, and could they throw the ball? Could they do this? Could they do that? They were underdogs at Wisconsin. And then you remember the flea flicker and, opening up the offense a little bit for Cade McNamara, and Michigan wins that one going away. And then the next year, it's that game at Iowa. It's a tough, hard-nosed game, but, Michigan really controlled it, and were able to win that one as well. Last year, things were pretty good, but, even the Rutgers game at home, the Big Ten opener, was a little rough. Mikey Sanders still has the pick 6, but then the next week you go at Nebraska, and you come out of that Nebraska trip thinking, okay, this Michigan team may be the best in the country. I think Georgia struggled that day. You started to think that way middle of the year. So a long way of saying that we're going to learn a lot about Michigan on the road. I know Washington is not what it was last season, new staff, new players. I got a funny story on that too. I was talking to Phil Steele, who does his magazine in the summer, and he said that they ask all the schools for photos of each team for the preview, and he emailed somebody at Washington and said, "Hey, you got any photos of your top returning starters?" And they said, "We don't have any." So that's how different this team is going to be. But at the same time, Michigan has had limited success going out west to play what were then Pac-12 opponents during the regular season. I think they've lost 4 in a row in those types of situations. Of course, a little different now that Washington's in the Big Ten, but it's the same type of travel. I know that maybe the travel accommodations are a little better now, but still, the history isn't on their side. So it's going to be a challenge. We're going to learn a lot about Michigan, not only against Minnesota and how they can follow up a big win and how they can continue to progress now that the film's out there on this offense, but also when you go on the road. All you have is all you got, and they're going to have to kind of hunker down and make sure they can come out of there with a win, because I think that they have a really good chance of winning all these next several games until Oregon, as long as they do improve. At the same time, all these games look somewhat losable too. So every game is going to be an adventure. Every game is going to be its own fight.
Oh, it absolutely is. And before I let you get away, one more thing. Our listeners that aren't subscribers to the Wolverine on 3, I don't know if there are any deals going on right now or what's happening, because I'm a subscriber, so it's part of my daily existence during football season and the rest of the year to check out the great work you guys do at the Wolverine on 3. But if you can just run over the subscription rates or anything that's going on right now.
Yeah, so you're addicted like the rest of us,
yes.
I take it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it is an addiction to Michigan football, as we all know. Appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, we do have a special going on right now where you can use the promo code UM1, UM in the numeral 1, to get your first 2 months for just $1. So, hey, the next 2 months are going to be pretty exciting here with a lot of the season coming up. So would encourage anyone to check us out. We know the best Michigan fans listen to this podcast, so we want the best Michigan fans, the leaders and best of the Michigan fan base, to join us over at thewolverine.com.
That's right. So any of my listeners out there, if you are not a subscriber, I'm not sure why not, check it out. With us today has been Clayton Sayfie from Wolverine Magazine and the Wolverine on 3. Keep up the great work over there, Clayton, and we look forward to having you back soon.
Appreciate it. Anytime.
On Quick Hits today, the only injury news we've heard so far was on Monday from Sharon. He said Colston was coming along, should practice, then it was up to the docs. As far as Will Johnson goes, Sharon said nothing is serious and he was cleared to go back into the game at the end last week, but they decided to hold him out, they being the staff. What that means is anyone's guess, so it's wait and see. Here are a few game day notes of interest. Michigan leads the series with 77 wins against 25 losses. There have been 3 ties. The first meeting was a 14-6 Minnesota win back in October 1892 up in Minneapolis. The last meeting was also up in Minneapolis on October 7th of 2023, a 52-10 Michigan win. Head coach P.J. Fleck is in his 8th year. His record is 52-36. Overall, in 12 years as a head coach, his record is 82-58. Last year, the Gophers were 6-7, 3-6 in the Big Ten, which left them tied for 4th place in the West. They returned 14 starters, 5 on offense and 9 on defense. They played in the 2023 Quick Lane Bowl in Detroit, ending the season with a 30-24 win over Bowling Green. The weatherman says Saturday may be a good day to keep it on the ground. Temps in the low 70s, cloudy, with showers off and on during the game. Winds will be gusting up to 10 miles per hour. Kickoff will be just after 12 noon, and the game will be televised by Fox Sports. So Alex Orji gets his second start, and we'll see if the staff adds anything else to his plate. I would think if it's a wet day, we'll see a ground and pound game plan for Michigan. Still, it will be interesting to see if Alex and the offense make strides after that emotional win over USC. The Gophers are a gritty bunch, and P.J. Fleck is a good coach, and I expect they'll be ready to go. Next week, we hit the road for a rematch of the national championship game with Washington. On our Washington Visitors Edition, we'll be joined by Huskies Radio Network sideline reporter Elise Woodward. We had Elise on last year with us to preview the national championship game. Then on our Thursday Michigan Game Day show, we'll hear from beat reporter Aaron McMahon from MLive. So make sure you join us. That does it for now. Have a great Wolverine weekend, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Think victory, beat Minnesota, and keep that little brown jug right here for another year. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go blue.
Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!